You have been told your entire life that heart disease starts in the kitchen, that the butter on your toast, the fat marbling your steak, the egg yolks in your morning omelet, these are the quiet architects of arterial disaster. For decades, you have been taught to read nutrition labels with one question in mind: how much cholesterol? How much saturated fat? And if those numbers are low, you have been told you are safe. You have been told you are making the heart-healthy choice. But what if I told you that one of the most common foods in your daily diet, a food that many of you have been encouraged to eat, a food that carries no cholesterol warning label, a food that some of you may even believe is actively protecting your heart, is actually linked to more heart attacks than the cholesterol you have been so carefully avoiding? Let me say that again. There is a food consumed by millions of people every single day, often multiple times per day, that cardiologists are increasingly concerned about. Not because of its cholesterol content, not because of saturated fat, but because of something far more subtle, far more inflammatory, and far more damaging to the delicate inner lining of your blood vessels. And here is the most unsettling part. Many of you are eating this food specifically because you think it is good for your heart. I am Dr. Narges, and in this video, we are going to walk through a complete reframing of how you think about heart health. Not based on outdated dogma, not based on simplistic advice that has been repeated so many times it has become unquestioned truth, but based on a deeper, more accurate understanding of what actually triggers a heart attack. Because here's the reality that most people do not understand until it is too late. Cholesterol is not the enemy you have been taught to fear, and the real culprit, the daily driver of arterial damage that sets the stage for a heart attack, is sitting on your plate right now, disguised as something harmless. Think about your last meal. Think about the foods you reach for when you want something convenient, something shelf-stable, something that gives you a quick hit of energy. Think about the crackers you ate with your soup, the white bread wrapped around your sandwich, the bagel you grabbed on your way out the door, the bowl of cereal you ate before bed, the pasta you had for dinner last night, the rice that accompanied your stir-fry, the pretzels you snacked on while watching television, the pancake breakfast you treated yourself to on Sunday morning. Now think about how many times you have heard that these foods are fine, that they are low in fat, that they are heart healthy because they contain no cholesterol, that they are a better choice than butter, than cheese, than red meat. And yet, the data emerging from modern preventative cardiology tells a very different story. A story that challenges almost everything you have been told about what actually causes a heart attack. By the end of this video, you will understand something that most of your doctors may not have fully explained. You will understand why someone can have perfectly normal cholesterol numbers, exercise regularly, avoid red meat, and still end up in the cardiac unit with a blocked artery. And you will understand why someone else, someone with higher cholesterol, can eat eggs every morning and never experience a cardiac event. The difference is not genetics. The difference is not luck. The difference is a hidden mechanism that has been overlooked for decades, dismissed by food marketing, ignored by outdated nutritional guidelines, and completely misunderstood by the general public. This is not about fear. This is not about adding another food to a long list of things you can never eat again. I do not believe in alarmist medicine, and I do not believe in miracle cures. What I believe in is clarity. What I believe in is understanding the actual science so that you can make decisions from a place of knowledge, not from a place of marketing slogans or 30-second news segments. So let us begin with a question that I want you to hold in your mind for the next several minutes. It is a simple question, but the answer may surprise you. Here is the question. What is the single most common trigger of a heart attack? If you said cholesterol, you are not alone. Most people do. But you are also not entirely correct. And understanding why you are not correct is the first step toward a completely different way of protecting your heart. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine the inside of your arteries not as pipes that can simply get clogged like a drain, but as living, dynamic, incredibly sensitive tissue. Your arteries are not passive tubes. They are active organs. They respond to what you eat, how you move, how you sleep, and how you feel. The inner lining of your arteries, a layer called the endothelium, is only one cell thick. One cell. That is all that separates your blood from the underlying tissue. And that single layer of cells is responsible for producing molecules that keep your blood flowing smoothly, that prevent clotting, that relax your arterial walls, and that maintain the flexibility your heart needs to pump efficiently. Now here is where the misunderstanding begins. Most people believe that cholesterol floats through your bloodstream, sticks to the walls of your arteries like grease sticking to a pipe, and slowly builds up until one day it completely blocks the pipe. That is a useful mental image, but it is medically inaccurate. Cholesterol does not just randomly stick to healthy arterial walls. In fact, a healthy endothelium is remarkably good at keeping cholesterol moving right along, delivering it where it needs to go, and preventing any dangerous buildup. So what changes? What turns a healthy, flexible artery into a stiff, inflamed, plaque-riddled vessel? The answer is damage. The endothelium becomes damaged. And once that delicate single layer of cells is injured, the body sends cholesterol to the site of the injury as part of the healing process. Cholesterol is not the initial problem. Cholesterol is the bandage. The real problem is what caused the injury in the first place. This is the most important shift in thinking I hope you take away from this video. Heart attacks do not begin with high cholesterol. Heart attacks begin with arterial injury. And if you want to prevent heart attacks, your first question should not be, how do I lower my cholesterol? Your first question should be, what is injuring my arteries every single day? Often without my knowledge, often without any symptoms, often from foods I have been told are completely safe. And that brings us back to the food I mentioned at the beginning. The food that is linked to more heart attacks than cholesterol. The food that many of you are eating right now, at this very moment, believing it to be a neutral or even beneficial part of your diet. It is not red meat. It is not butter. It is not eggs. It is not cheese. It is something far more common, far more hidden, and far more deceptive. I am going to tell you exactly what that food is. But before I do, I want you to pause for a moment and consider your own habits. Consider the foods you reach for when you are tired, the foods you eat when you do not have time to cook, the foods that are marketed to you as low-fat, heart-healthy, cholesterol-free, and convenient. Consider how often you have been told that fat is the enemy, that saturated fat clogs arteries, that a low-fat diet is the path to a healthy heart. And then consider the possibility that the foods you replaced fat with, the foods that filled the space left by butter and eggs and red meat, may actually be doing more harm than the fat you removed. This is not a simple story. It is not a story with a single villain and a single hero. It is a story about the complexity of human biology, the unintended consequences of nutritional advice, and the quiet damage that accumulates over years of daily habits. And it is a story that I believe every single person over the age of 40 needs to hear, understand, and act upon. Not with fear, not with perfectionism, but with awareness, with curiosity, and with the calm confidence that comes from finally understanding what is actually happening inside your body. So stay with me, because in the next part of this video, I am going to walk you through the hidden mechanism that connects this common food to arterial injury, inflammation, and ultimately, heart attacks. I am going to show you why the advice you have been given for decades may have been focused on the wrong target, and I am going to give you the tools you need to make a simple, meaningful shift in your daily eating habits that could protect your heart far more effectively than avoiding cholesterol ever could. But first, let me ask you directly. Think about your last meal. What did you eat? And how much of it came from a package, a box, a bag, or a restaurant kitchen, rather than from the outer edges of the grocery store, where the fresh produce, the meats, and the dairy live? The answer to that question matters more than you know, and by the time this video ends, you will understand exactly why. Let me take you back to the 1980s, because to understand why so many of us are eating this food every single day, we have to understand how we got here. And the story of how we got here is a story about good intentions, oversimplified science, and a public health message that was repeated so loudly and so often that it became impossible to question. In the late 20th century, a hypothesis emerged. It was called the diet heart hypothesis, and it proposed that dietary saturated fat and dietary cholesterol raised blood cholesterol, which then caused heart disease. On paper, it made sense. It was clean, it was logical, and it gave the public a clear enemy: fat, cholesterol, red meat, eggs, butter, cheese. These became the villains of the American dinner table. And so a massive public health campaign began. Governments issued dietary guidelines, food manufacturers saw an opportunity, and the grocery store began to transform. Low-fat products appeared on every shelf. Fat was removed from cookies, crackers, yogurt, frozen meals, and salad dressings. But here's the thing about food. When you remove fat, you remove flavor, and food that does not taste good does not sell. So the food industry had to put something back. And what they put back, what replaced the fat in almost every processed food product on the market, was sugar, and refined carbohydrates, and highly processed starches. Now, let me be very clear about something. The food industry did not do this out of malice. They did it because they were responding to what the public wanted. The public wanted low-fat foods. The public believed that low fat meant heart healthy, and the food industry gave the public exactly what they asked for. But in doing so, they created an entirely new set of health problems that we are only now beginning to fully understand. Think about a typical low-fat cracker from the 1990s. No fat, no cholesterol. It said heart healthy right on the box. But what was actually in that cracker? Refined white flour, sugar, high fructose corn syrup, modified starches, emulsifiers, preservatives, and almost no fiber, no protein, no healthy fats, and no nutrients that actually support arterial health. That cracker was not heart healthy. That cracker was a delivery system for highly processed carbohydrates that your body converts into sugar almost instantly. And this is where the overlooked problem begins. Because for decades, we have been told that the biggest threat to our hearts is the cholesterol in our food. But the evidence simply does not support that belief. Let me share something with you that may surprise you. Dietary cholesterol has very little effect on blood cholesterol levels for the majority of people. Your liver produces about 80% of the cholesterol in your body. Only about 20% comes from food. And when you eat more cholesterol, your liver simply produces less to compensate. This is why many people can eat eggs every day and see no meaningful change in their cholesterol numbers. So if dietary cholesterol is not the primary driver of heart disease, what is? The answer, which has been hiding in plain sight for decades, is chronic inflammation driven by something called metabolic dysfunction. And the primary dietary driver of metabolic dysfunction is not saturated fat. It is not dietary cholesterol. It is the overconsumption of highly processed, rapidly digesting carbohydrates and added sugars. Let me explain what I mean by metabolic dysfunction. Every time you eat a meal that is high in refined carbohydrates and added sugars, your blood sugar rises. In response, your pancreas releases insulin, a hormone that helps move sugar from your bloodstream into your cells. This is a normal, healthy process. But when you eat these kinds of foods repeatedly, day after day, meal after meal, your cells begin to become less sensitive to insulin. They start to ignore the signal. Your pancreas responds by producing even more insulin to force the sugar into your cells. Over time, this leads to chronically elevated insulin levels, a condition called hyperinsulinemia. And hyperinsulinemia is one of the most powerful drivers of arterial inflammation and damage that we know of. Now, here is where the connection to heart attacks becomes crystal clear. Remember that delicate inner lining of your arteries, the endothelium I described earlier? Chronically elevated insulin and blood sugar directly damage that lining. They create oxidative stress. They trigger inflammatory molecules, and they set the stage for the very arterial injury that leads to plaque formation. This is not theoretical. This is basic cellular biology. High blood sugar and high insulin levels are toxic to your endothelial cells. They cause those cells to become dysfunctional, to stop producing the molecules that keep your blood flowing smoothly, and to start attracting inflammatory immune cells into the arterial wall. And what happens next? The body sends cholesterol to the site of that inflammation as part of the healing response. The cholesterol is not the cause. The cholesterol is the firefighter showing up to a burning building. The real problem is the fire. The real problem is the chronic, low-grade inflammation that smolders inside your arteries for years, often without any symptoms, often without any warning signs, until one day a plaque becomes unstable, ruptures, and causes a heart attack. This is the overlooked problem that most people simply do not understand. We have been so focused on cholesterol, so focused on the firefighter, that we have completely ignored the fire. We have been putting all of our energy into lowering cholesterol while continuing to eat the foods that are actively injuring our arteries every single day. Let me give you a concrete example. Consider two people. Person A eats a diet that includes eggs, grass-fed meat, butter, and full-fat yogurt, but they avoid processed foods, added sugars, and refined grains. Their cholesterol numbers might be slightly elevated, but their insulin levels are low. Their blood sugar is stable. Their endothelial function is healthy. Person B eats a low-fat diet. They avoid eggs and red meat. They eat whole wheat bread, low-fat crackers, fat-free salad dressing, brown rice, whole grain pasta, and breakfast cereal. They believe they are making heart-healthy choices. But every single one of those foods, even the whole grain versions, is rapidly converted to sugar in their bloodstream. Every meal causes a spike in blood sugar and insulin, and over time, that repeated daily spike damages their arteries far more than person A's eggs and butter ever could. Which person do you think is at higher risk for a heart attack? If you said person B, you are beginning to understand the overlooked problem. And this is not speculation. This is supported by a growing body of evidence from modern nutritional science. Large prospective studies have consistently shown that diets high in refined carbohydrates and added sugars are associated with increased risk of heart disease, independent of cholesterol levels. Meanwhile, the link between dietary saturated fat and heart disease has been called into question by multiple meta-analyses and large-scale reviews. I want to be very careful here because I do not want to be misunderstood. I am not saying that saturated fat is completely harmless. I am not saying that cholesterol does not matter. And I am absolutely not saying that you should eat unlimited amounts of butter and red meat. What I am saying is that our singular focus on cholesterol has caused us to miss a much larger, much more pervasive threat. And that threat is hiding in plain sight, in the foods that have been marketed to us as heart-healthy, low-fat, and safe. Think about the foods that fill the center aisles of your grocery store. The crackers, the pretzels, the rice cakes, the low-fat cookies, the fat-free frozen yogurt, the whole grain cereals, the granola bars, the flavored oatmeal packets, the white bread, the bagels, the pasta, the white rice, the pancakes, the waffles, the muffins, the commercial salad dressings with added sugar, the pasta sauces with high fructose corn syrup, the low-fat peanut butter with added sugar, the fruit juices, the sports drinks, the sweetened teas. These foods, many of which carry health claims on their packaging, are the primary source of the refined carbohydrates and added sugars that drive metabolic dysfunction, chronic inflammation, and arterial injury. And they are consumed by the vast majority of people every single day, often multiple times per day, completely unaware of the hidden damage they are causing. Here is something that may shock you. The average American consumes approximately 17 teaspoons of added sugar every day. That is more than double the recommended limit for men and nearly triple the recommended limit for women. And a significant portion of that sugar comes not from desserts or candy, but from so-called healthy foods: yogurt, granola, breakfast cereal, salad dressing, tomato sauce, whole grain bread, protein bars, smoothies. These are the hidden sources of sugar that most people never think about. And sugar is only part of the problem. Refined carbohydrates, even without added sugar, are rapidly digested and absorbed, causing a rapid rise in blood glucose. White bread, white rice, white pasta, crackers, pretzels, rice cakes, and even many whole grain products have been milled into fine flours that behave almost identically to sugar in your bloodstream. Your body does not care whether the glucose came from a candy bar or a bowl of whole wheat pasta. It responds the same way. Insulin rises, inflammation increases, and your arteries pay the price. This is the overlooked problem that has been hiding in plain sight for decades. And it explains a medical mystery that has puzzled cardiologists for years. How can someone with normal cholesterol, someone who exercises, someone who avoids red meat and eggs, still have a heart attack? The answer is now clear. They were eating a diet that was low in fat and low in cholesterol, but high in the very foods that injure arteries, drive inflammation, and create the conditions for heart disease. So here is where we stand. You now understand that the common belief about cholesterol and heart disease is incomplete. You understand that arterial injury, not cholesterol, is the true starting point of heart attacks. And you understand that the primary dietary driver of that arterial injury is not saturated fat or dietary cholesterol, but the overconsumption of refined carbohydrates and added sugars. You understand that the foods you may have been eating because you thought they were heart healthy may actually be doing more harm than good. But understanding the problem is only the first step. In the next part of this video, I am going to walk you through a real-world example. A patient, someone just like you, someone who did everything right according to conventional wisdom, someone who avoided cholesterol, avoided saturated fat, exercised regularly, and still ended up in the emergency room with a blocked artery. And as we walk through their story, you will see exactly how the hidden mechanism I have just described plays out in real life, in real bodies, with real consequences. Because this is not abstract science. This is the reality of modern cardiology, and it is happening to people every single day. Let me tell you about a patient I want you to meet. I will call him Richard. Richard is 62 years old. He is retired from a career in public administration, and he lives in a quiet suburban neighborhood with his wife of 38 years. Richard is the kind of person who follows rules. He always has. When his doctor told him to lower his cholesterol, he did exactly what he was told. He stopped eating red meat. He switched from butter to margarine. He replaced his morning eggs with a bowl of whole grain cereal and low-fat milk. He started eating more chicken breast, more fish, more salads with low-fat dressing. He swapped his white bread for whole wheat. He replaced his white rice with brown rice. He started eating low-fat crackers as a snack instead of cheese. He switched from regular soda to diet soda, and then eventually to fruit juice because he thought it was healthier. Richard was proud of himself, and he should have been. He had made dramatic changes to his diet. He had done everything the guidelines told him to do. He had become the model patient. When his friends would complain about giving up their favorite foods, Richard would quietly feel a sense of satisfaction. He had done the hard work. He was protecting his heart. And for a while, it seemed to be working. His cholesterol numbers came down. Not dramatically, but enough to make his doctor nod with approval. His LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol, was now in what is considered a healthy range. His HDL, the good cholesterol, was acceptable. His triglycerides, a type of fat in the blood that is highly responsive to diet, were actually a little elevated, but his doctor did not seem too concerned. Richard was told to keep doing what he was doing. He was told he was on the right track. So Richard kept going. He ate his whole grain cereal every morning. He ate his low-fat crackers with his soup at lunch. He ate his brown rice with chicken and vegetables at dinner. He snacked on pretzels in the evening while watching the news. He drank orange juice with breakfast and apple juice with lunch. He felt good. He felt like he was in control of his health. Then one Tuesday afternoon, Richard was in his garage organizing some old boxes. It was nothing strenuous, just bending over, lifting a few light boxes, moving them from one shelf to another. And then, without any warning, he felt it. A pressure in his chest. Not a sharp pain, not the dramatic clutching of the chest that you see in movies. It was more like a heavy weight, like someone was sitting on his sternum. The sensation spread to his left shoulder and up into his jaw. He felt short of breath. He broke out in a cold sweat. He felt nauseous. His wife found him leaning against the workbench, pale and confused. She called 911. The paramedics arrived within minutes. The EKG showed something concerning. Richard was having a heart attack. In the emergency department, the cardiologist performed an angiogram. A thin tube was threaded through an artery in Richard's groin up to his heart, and dye was injected to visualize his coronary arteries. What they found surprised everyone. Richard did not have severe, diffuse plaque buildup throughout his arteries. He did not have the kind of advanced coronary artery disease you might expect in a 62-year-old man who had eaten a standard American diet for decades. Instead, he had one single, unstable plaque in one of his major coronary arteries, a plaque that had ruptured, a plaque that had caused a blood clot to form, a plaque that had suddenly, without warning, blocked the flow of blood to a significant portion of his heart muscle. The cardiologist placed a stent to open the blocked artery. Richard survived. He was lucky. But as he lay in the hospital bed in the days that followed, he could not stop asking the same question over and over again. How could this happen? He had done everything right. He had lowered his cholesterol, he had avoided saturated fat, he had eaten the heart-healthy diet. How could he still have a heart attack? The answer to Richard's question, and the reason I am sharing his story with you, is that Richard had been fighting the wrong battle. He had been so focused on lowering his cholesterol that he had completely missed the real threat. And that real threat was hiding in plain sight, in almost every single meal he ate every single day. Let me walk you through Richard's typical daily diet. And as I do, I want you to listen carefully, because I suspect that for many of you, this will sound familiar. Richard starts his day with a bowl of whole grain cereal. Not the sugary kids cereal, but a healthy brand. Whole grain oats, multigrain flakes, maybe some shredded wheat. He adds low-fat milk. He drinks a glass of orange juice. On the surface, this looks like a healthy breakfast, but let me translate that breakfast into what actually happens inside Richard's body. Whole grain cereal, even without added sugar, is a concentrated source of rapidly digesting carbohydrates. The grains have been processed, milled, and cooked. The fiber has been disrupted. The starches are highly available. When Richard eats that cereal, his digestive system converts it into glucose almost immediately. The orange juice, despite coming from fruit, is essentially sugar water. A single glass of orange juice contains about 22 grams of sugar, roughly the same amount as a glazed donut. So Richard's heart-healthy breakfast delivers a massive spike in blood sugar and insulin within minutes of his first bite. For lunch, Richard has a sandwich on whole wheat bread with turkey breast, lettuce, tomato, and a smear of low-fat mayonnaise. On the side, he has a small bag of baked potato chips and a diet soda. The whole wheat bread, despite the word whole, is still made from finely milled flour. It digests almost as quickly as white bread. The baked potato chips are essentially processed potato starch. The diet soda does not contain sugar, but artificial sweeteners have been shown in some studies to alter gut bacteria and may still trigger an insulin response in some people. By the end of lunch, Richard's blood sugar and insulin are once again elevated. In the afternoon, Richard has a snack, a handful of pretzels and a low-fat granola bar. Pretzels are made from refined white flour and salt. They have almost no fiber, no protein, no fat to slow digestion. They are pure, rapidly absorbing carbohydrate. The granola bar, even the healthy ones, are often packed with added sugar, honey, brown rice syrup, or other sweeteners. Richard's afternoon snack is another glucose spike. For dinner, Richard has baked chicken breast, a large portion of brown rice, and steamed broccoli. The brown rice, while better than white rice, is still a concentrated source of carbohydrate. A cup of brown rice contains about 45 grams of carbohydrate, which is converted to glucose in Richard's bloodstream. Add to that the natural sugars in the broccoli and the small amount of carbohydrate in the chicken from any marinade or seasoning, and Richard's dinner delivers yet another significant glucose load. Throughout the day, Richard also drinks fluids. He has a glass of apple juice with lunch. He has a bottle of vitamin water in the afternoon. He has a cup of hot chocolate before bed. Each of these beverages adds more sugar to his daily total. Now, let me add up what Richard is eating. By the end of the day, Richard has consumed well over 300 grams of carbohydrate, a significant portion of which comes from rapidly digesting refined sources and added sugars. His pancreas has released massive amounts of insulin to manage all of that glucose. His blood sugar has spiked and crashed multiple times. His insulin levels have remained chronically elevated, and his arterial endothelium has been subjected to repeated, daily assaults of oxidative stress and inflammation. This is the hidden mechanism that Richard never understood. This is why his cholesterol numbers looked acceptable, but his arteries were still vulnerable. This is why he developed an unstable plaque that ruptured and caused a heart attack. Richard was not eating a heart-healthy diet. He was eating a diet that was low in fat and low in cholesterol, but high in the very foods that cause arterial injury. And here is what makes Richard's story so important. Richard is not an exception. Richard is the rule. Every single day, cardiologists see patients like Richard. Patients who did everything they were told. Patients who lowered their cholesterol. Patients who avoided saturated fat. Patients who believed they were protecting their hearts. Patients who were shocked, confused, and devastated when they ended up in the cardiac unit. The tragedy is that Richard could have been spared this experience. If he had understood the real mechanism driving heart attacks, if he had known that arterial injury matters more than cholesterol, if he had been taught to look beyond the low-fat, low-cholesterol labels and ask different questions about his food, he could have made different choices. Not extreme choices, not restrictive choices, but smarter choices. Choices that would have addressed the real problem instead of the decoy. I want you to pause here for a moment. I want you to think about your own daily eating patterns. How many of the foods you eat are similar to Richard's? How many meals do you eat that are based on grains, breads, pastas, rice, cereals, crackers, pretzels, or other processed carbohydrates? How many beverages do you drink that contain added sugar or natural sugar from fruit juice? How often do you reach for a low-fat, low-cholesterol product because you believe it is the heart-healthy choice? If you are like most people, the answer is probably more often than you realize, and that is not your fault. You have been told your entire life that these foods are safe. You have been told that low fat and low cholesterol are synonymous with heart healthy. You have been told to build your meals around grains and to limit fats. These messages have come from authoritative sources, from government guidelines, from medical associations, from well-meaning doctors, from food packaging, from every direction. But the science has evolved, and our understanding of what actually causes heart attacks has become more sophisticated. We now know that the diet heart hypothesis, the idea that dietary fat and cholesterol are the primary drivers of heart disease, was an oversimplification. We now know that chronic inflammation, metabolic dysfunction, and arterial injury are the real story. And we now know that the foods most closely linked to those processes are not the foods containing fat and cholesterol. They are the foods containing refined carbohydrates and added sugars. This is not a fringe opinion. This is the consensus of a growing number of cardiologists, lipidologists, and nutritional scientists who have spent their careers studying the actual mechanisms of heart disease. And it is why I am making this video. Because I believe that you deserve to have this information. I believe that you deserve to understand the real science, not the simplified messages that have been repeated for decades. I believe that you deserve to make informed choices about your health, choices based on a complete understanding of how your body actually works, not on outdated dogma. In the next part of this video, I am going to take you deep inside the artery. I am going to walk you through the hidden mechanism step by step, from the first bite of food to the final rupture of a plaque. You will see exactly how refined carbohydrates and added sugars cause the chain of events that leads to a heart attack. You will understand why some plaques are stable and harmless, while others are unstable and deadly. And you will finally understand the connection between the food on your plate and the health of your heart in a way that most people never will. But before we go there, I want you to hold Richard's story in your mind. Because Richard could have been anyone. Richard could have been your neighbor. Richard could have been your brother. Richard could have been you. And the fact that Richard survived, that he got a stent, that he walked out of the hospital, does not change the fact that his heart attack was preventable. It was preventable if he had understood the real threat. It was preventable if he had been given complete and accurate information. And it is my hope that by the end of this video, you will have that information. You will understand what Richard did not, and you will be able to make choices that protect your heart in the way that actually matters. Now it is time to go inside the artery. Because understanding the hidden mechanism, the actual chain of events that connects the food on your plate to a heart attack, is the most important thing you will learn in this entire video. And I want to walk you through it step by step in a way that is clear, that is accurate, and that you will remember. Let us begin with a single bite of food. Not a bite of steak, not a bite of cheese, not a bite of egg. Let us take a bite of a low-fat cracker, or a piece of whole wheat bread, or a spoonful of white rice, or a sip of orange juice. These foods, which many of you eat every single day believing them to be harmless or even healthy, set in motion a cascade of events inside your body that directly damages your arteries. Here's what happens. Within minutes of eating that bite of food, your digestive system begins breaking down the carbohydrates into their simplest form, glucose. Glucose is a sugar molecule. It is the primary fuel for your cells, and your body needs it to function. But the key variable, the thing that determines whether that glucose is a harmless fuel or a dangerous toxin, is the speed and quantity with which it enters your bloodstream. When you eat a food that is rapidly digested, a food that has been processed, milled, stripped of fiber, and stripped of the fats and proteins that normally slow digestion, that glucose hits your bloodstream like a wave, a sudden, dramatic surge. Your blood sugar rises quickly, often reaching levels that are significantly higher than what your body is designed to handle on a regular basis. Your pancreas, sensing this sudden rise, releases insulin. Insulin is your body's glucose manager. Its job is to signal your cells to open up and take glucose out of the bloodstream. Under normal circumstances, this works beautifully, but when you repeatedly flood your system with rapidly digesting carbohydrates, meal after meal, day after day, year after year, something begins to change. Your cells become less sensitive to insulin's signal. They start to ignore it. This is called insulin resistance, and it is the beginning of metabolic dysfunction. When your cells become insulin resistant, your pancreas has to work harder. It releases more and more insulin to try to force the glucose into your cells. This leads to chronically elevated insulin levels, a condition called hyperinsulinemia. And hyperinsulinemia, along with the repeated blood sugar spikes that precede it, is where the damage to your arteries begins. Let me explain exactly how this damage happens. Remember the endothelium, that single layer of cells lining the inside of your arteries? Those cells are exquisitely sensitive to changes in your blood chemistry. When your blood sugar rises too high too quickly, it creates something called oxidative stress. Imagine tiny sparks flying off the glucose molecules, damaging everything they touch. Those sparks, which are called reactive oxygen species, directly injure your endothelial cells. They damage the cell membranes. They damage the DNA inside the cells. They trigger inflammation. At the same time, chronically elevated insulin levels have their own damaging effects. Insulin, in high concentrations, is directly inflammatory to the endothelium. It stimulates the production of adhesion molecules, which are like tiny Velcro strips on the surface of your endothelial cells. These adhesion molecules are designed to catch passing immune cells and pull them into the arterial wall. Under normal conditions, this is part of the body's immune surveillance. But under conditions of chronic hyperinsulinemia, it becomes a recruitment drive for inflammation. Now here is where the process accelerates. Those immune cells, once they are pulled into the arterial wall, transform into something called foam cells. Foam cells are macrophages, which are the garbage trucks of your immune system, that have become so engorged with cholesterol and other lipids that they take on a foamy appearance under a microscope. These foam cells accumulate in the arterial wall, forming the core of what will become an atherosclerotic plaque. And what triggers those immune cells to consume all that cholesterol? Inflammation. The very inflammation caused by the oxidative stress from high blood sugar and the direct inflammatory effects of high insulin. The cholesterol is not the initiator. The cholesterol is the fuel that the fire consumes. But the fire itself, the spark that starts the whole process, is the metabolic dysfunction driven by refined carbohydrates and added sugars. Let me take you one step deeper into the artery. As the plaque grows, your artery tries to protect itself. It builds a fibrous cap over the plaque, a kind of lid made of smooth muscle cells and collagen that keeps the inflammatory contents of the plaque separated from the flowing blood. A plaque with a thick, stable, fibrous cap can sit in your artery for decades without causing any problems. It might narrow the artery slightly, but it will not cause a heart attack. The danger comes when that fibrous cap becomes thin and unstable. And what makes the fibrous cap thin? Inflammation. The same inflammatory process that created the plaque in the first place begins to degrade the fibrous cap. Inflammatory enzymes, released by those foam cells and other immune cells, literally eat away at the collagen and the structural proteins that keep the cap strong. The cap becomes thin, fragile, and prone to rupture. This is the critical moment. This is the difference between a harmless plaque and a deadly plaque. A plaque with a thick, stable cap can remain silent forever. A plaque with a thin, inflamed cap can rupture at any moment. And when that rupture happens, the contents of the plaque, the inflammatory debris, the tissue factor, the cholesterol crystals, are suddenly exposed to your bloodstream. Your body interprets this as an injury. It responds the way it always responds to injury. It forms a blood clot. That blood clot can grow rapidly, completely blocking the artery within minutes, and that is a heart attack. Not a slow, gradual clogging of the pipe, but a sudden, catastrophic event triggered by the rupture of an unstable plaque. A plaque that became unstable because of chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation that was driven by years of eating foods that spike blood sugar and insulin. Foods that many of you have been told are heart healthy. This is the hidden mechanism. And it explains so much that the old cholesterol model could never explain. It explains why some people with high cholesterol never have heart attacks. Their plaques remain stable. Their fibrous caps stay thick. Their inflammation is low. It explains why some people with normal cholesterol have heart attacks. Their plaques are unstable. Their inflammation is high. Their fibrous caps are thin and ready to rupture. It explains why Richard, our patient from the last section, had a heart attack despite doing everything he was told to lower his cholesterol. His cholesterol was not the problem. His chronic, daily assault of refined carbohydrates and added sugars was the problem. Let me give you a specific example of how this plays out with a food that many of you eat regularly. Consider a glass of fruit juice, orange juice, apple juice, grape juice. These are marketed as healthy choices. They come from fruit. They contain vitamins. But let me walk you through what happens when you drink a glass of orange juice. You are consuming about 22 grams of sugar, almost all of it in the form of fructose and glucose, with no fiber to slow absorption. That sugar hits your bloodstream in minutes. Your blood sugar spikes. Your insulin spikes. You create oxidative stress. You trigger inflammation. You stimulate adhesion molecules on your endothelium. You recruit immune cells into your arterial wall. You begin to destabilize any plaques that may already be present. And you do this every single time you drink a glass of juice. Now consider the difference between that glass of orange juice and eating a whole orange. The whole orange contains the same sugar, but it is trapped inside the cellular structure of the fruit, surrounded by fiber. It takes your digestive system much longer to break down that cellular structure. The sugar enters your bloodstream slowly, gradually. No spike, no surge, no oxidative stress, no inflammatory cascade. The same sugar, delivered differently, produces a completely different biological response. This is the power of understanding the hidden mechanism. Once you understand that the speed of glucose delivery matters more than the presence of glucose itself, you begin to see food in a completely different way. You stop asking how much cholesterol is in this food. You start asking, how quickly will this food raise my blood sugar? You stop being afraid of the fat in an avocado or the cholesterol in an egg. You start being suspicious of the refined flour in a pretzel or the sugar in a granola bar. Let me take you to another level of this mechanism, because there is one more piece that most people miss entirely. It is not just about blood sugar and insulin. It is also about something called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. When glucose is present in your bloodstream at high levels, it can bind to proteins and fats in a process called glycation. This creates abnormal, damaged molecules called AGEs. These AGEs are highly inflammatory. They bind to receptors on your endothelial cells and trigger even more inflammation, even more oxidative stress, and even more arterial damage. They also stiffen your arteries directly, cross-linking collagen and elastin, the proteins that keep your blood vessels flexible and springy. Stiff arteries mean higher blood pressure, more wear and tear on your heart, and increased risk of heart attack and stroke. Every time you eat a meal that spikes your blood sugar, you are creating AGEs. Every time you eat a meal that spikes your blood sugar, you are stiffening your arteries. Every time you eat a meal that spikes your blood sugar, you are fanning the flames of inflammation inside your blood vessels. And the foods that cause the biggest spikes, the most damaging spikes, are not the foods containing fat or cholesterol. They are the foods containing rapidly digesting carbohydrates and added sugars. I want to be very clear about something. I am not saying that you should never eat carbohydrates. I am not saying that all carbohydrates are bad. The human body runs on glucose. Your brain alone consumes about 120 grams of glucose per day. Carbohydrates are not the enemy. The enemy is the form, the processing, and the quantity. A sweet potato, with its fiber and its cellular structure intact, is a very different food than a baked potato that has been mashed into a paste. Steel-cut oats are a very different food than instant oatmeal. A whole apple is a very different food than applesauce or apple juice. A legume, a bean, a lentil, with its protein and fiber, is a very different food than a cracker made from refined bean flour. The hidden mechanism, the chain of events from food to heart attack, is driven by speed and concentration. Rapidly delivered glucose in high concentrations damages your arteries. Slowly delivered glucose in moderate concentrations does not. This is the insight that changes everything. This is the insight that allows you to look at a food and know, with reasonable accuracy, whether it is likely to be harming your heart or protecting it. Not by reading the cholesterol number on the label, not by looking for the low-fat claim, but by asking a simple question. How quickly will this food raise my blood sugar? This question is so important that researchers have developed a scale to answer it. It is called the glycemic index. Foods that raise blood sugar quickly have a high glycemic index. Foods that raise blood sugar slowly have a low glycemic index. And over decades of research, a clear pattern has emerged. Diets that emphasize high glycemic index foods are associated with increased risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and other metabolic diseases. Diets that emphasize low glycemic index foods are associated with reduced risk. But even the glycemic index is not the complete picture, because the glycemic index tells you how quickly a food raises blood sugar, but it does not tell you how much of that food you are eating. That is where the glycemic load comes in. Glycemic load takes into account both the speed of glucose delivery and the quantity. A food with a high glycemic index can have a low glycemic load if you only eat a small amount. A food with a low glycemic index can have a high glycemic load if you eat a large amount. Both matter. But the principle remains the same. The damage to your arteries is driven by the combination of speed and quantity. Now here is where the story gets even more interesting, because once you understand this mechanism, once you understand that arterial injury is driven by the speed and quantity of glucose entering your bloodstream, you begin to realize that the dietary advice you have been given for decades has been focused on the wrong target. You have been told to fear fat. You have been told to fear cholesterol. You have been told to build your meals around grains, cereals, pastas, breads, and rice. But those very foods, especially in their processed, refined forms, are the ones that most reliably spike your blood sugar, elevate your insulin, and injure your arteries. You have been told that a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet is heart-healthy, but the evidence suggests otherwise, and the mechanism I have just walked you through explains exactly why. It is not about the cholesterol. It is not about the saturated fat. It is about the inflammation. It is about the oxidative stress. It is about the arterial injury. It is about the chronic daily assault on the delicate lining of your blood vessels from foods that are rapidly converted to glucose. Now we arrive at the part of this video that I believe will transform the way you think about food and heart health. Because understanding the hidden mechanism, the chain of events from refined carbohydrates to arterial inflammation to plaque rupture, is essential. But knowledge without application is just trivia, and I do not want you to walk away from this video with nothing more than an interesting story you heard from a cardiologist on YouTube. I want you to walk away with insights you can actually use. Insights that will change your daily decisions. Insights that will protect your heart in ways that lowering your cholesterol never could. So here are the 3 key insights most people miss, and I am going to give them to you one at a time, with a micro tease before each one, because each insight builds on the last, and each insight reveals something that is hiding in plain sight. The first insight most people miss is this: the damage to your arteries is not caused by the cholesterol you eat. It is caused by the inflammation you create, and the primary dietary driver of that inflammation is not fat. It is the repeated, daily spike in blood sugar and insulin from refined carbohydrates and added sugars. Let me say that again because it is so important. The damage is not caused by the cholesterol you eat. It is caused by the inflammation you create. And that inflammation is driven, more than any other dietary factor, by the speed and frequency with which you raise your blood sugar. Think about what this means for your daily choices. Every time you reach for a food that is made from refined flour, white rice, instant oats, or any other rapidly digesting carbohydrate, you are not just eating calories. You are initiating an inflammatory cascade inside your arteries. Every time you drink a beverage sweetened with sugar, honey, agave, fruit juice concentrate, or any other caloric sweetener, you are directly injuring the delicate lining of your blood vessels. Every time you eat a meal that is high in rapidly digesting carbohydrates and low in protein, fat, and fiber, you are creating the conditions for oxidative stress, endothelial dysfunction, and plaque destabilization. This is not theoretical. This is measurable. Researchers can take blood samples before and after a high glycemic meal and see the inflammatory markers rise within hours. They can measure the adhesion molecules on your endothelial cells increasing. They can see the temporary dysfunction in your arterial dilation. The damage begins within minutes of your first bite and continues for hours afterward. And if you eat 3 meals a day plus snacks, all of them built around refined carbohydrates, you are keeping your arteries in a constant state of low-grade inflammation. You are never giving your endothelium a chance to rest and repair. Here is what most people do not understand. Your body has remarkable capacity for healing. If you give your arteries a break, if you stop assaulting them with repeated blood sugar spikes, they will begin to repair themselves. The inflammation will subside. The endothelial function will improve. The oxidative stress will decrease. But if you never give them a break, if you eat refined carbohydrates from breakfast until bedtime, the damage accumulates. And over years and decades, that accumulated damage becomes irreversible. This is why the pattern of eating matters as much as the content of eating. It is not just about what you eat. It is about how often you eat it and what you eat it with. A small amount of refined carbohydrate eaten alongside protein, fat, and fiber will produce a much smaller blood sugar spike than the same amount eaten alone. A meal that is balanced, that includes vegetables, protein, and healthy fats, will slow the absorption of glucose and protect your arteries from the damaging spike. This is not about perfection. This is about pattern. This is about reducing the frequency and magnitude of the insults to your endothelium. The first insight, then, is a shift in focus. Stop focusing on cholesterol. Start focusing on inflammation. Stop fearing the fat on your plate. Start respecting the power of blood sugar control. And begin to see every meal as an opportunity either to inflame your arteries or to protect them. Now let me give you the second insight most people miss. And I want you to lean in here because this one surprises almost everyone. The second insight is this. A food can be low in fat, low in cholesterol, and even low in sugar, and still be highly damaging to your arteries if it is made from refined grains. Most people understand that added sugar is not healthy. That message has finally started to penetrate the public consciousness. But what most people do not understand is that refined grains, even without added sugar, behave almost identically to sugar in your bloodstream. White bread, white rice, white pasta, crackers, pretzels, rice cakes, many breakfast cereals, tortillas made from refined flour, bagels, muffins, pancakes, waffles, and even many so-called whole grain products that have been milled into fine flours. These foods are rapidly converted to glucose. They spike your blood sugar. They spike your insulin. They create inflammation. And they do all of this without a single gram of added sugar on the ingredient list. Let me give you a specific example. A plain baked potato has no added sugar. It is a whole food. But a baked potato, especially when eaten without the skin and without fat or protein to slow digestion, has a glycemic index higher than table sugar. That means a plain baked potato will raise your blood sugar faster and higher than an equal amount of sucrose. This does not mean you should never eat a potato, but it does mean you should understand what you are doing when you eat one. You are delivering a rapid, concentrated dose of glucose to your bloodstream. And if you eat that potato alongside a piece of salmon and a large serving of broccoli, the fat and protein and fiber will slow the absorption and protect your arteries. If you eat that potato by itself, or with nothing but a pat of butter, you are creating a significant blood sugar spike. The same principle applies to white rice. A cup of white rice contains about 45 grams of carbohydrate, almost none of it accompanied by fiber or protein. It digests rapidly. It spikes blood sugar. It spikes insulin. Brown rice is better, but not by as much as most people think. The difference in glycemic index between white rice and brown rice is relatively small. Both are concentrated sources of rapidly digesting carbohydrate. Both will raise your blood sugar significantly. The real difference is between rice and non-starchy vegetables. A cup of broccoli contains about 6 grams of carbohydrate, accompanied by fiber and water and phytochemicals. It will not spike your blood sugar. It will not spike your insulin. It will not inflame your arteries. This is the second insight. The form of the carbohydrate matters as much as the quantity. Whole, intact, unprocessed plant foods that still have their fiber and cellular structure intact are fundamentally different from foods that have been milled, ground, extruded, or otherwise processed into flour. The flour, regardless of whether it came from wheat, rice, corn, or oats, is a processed ingredient that will raise your blood sugar more quickly than the intact grain. This is why steel-cut oats are better than rolled oats, which are better than instant oats. This is why a whole apple is better than applesauce, which is better than apple juice. This is why a whole grain of wheat, cooked as wheat berries, is different from whole wheat flour. The act of milling, of grinding the grain into flour, increases the surface area and disrupts the fiber matrix. It makes the starch more available for rapid digestion. It turns a slow carbohydrate into a fast one. And here is where the food industry has been particularly clever. They have learned that they can take refined flour, add a small amount of whole grain flour or bran, and legally call the product whole grain. They can add coloring to make it look brown and healthy. They can put a heart on the box. But inside that box is still a product made from flour, which will raise your blood sugar almost as quickly as white flour. The difference between white bread and whole wheat bread, in terms of glycemic response, is often minimal. Both are flour. Both are rapidly digested. Both will spike your blood sugar. Both will inflame your arteries. I am not saying that whole wheat bread is no better than white bread. It is slightly better. It has a little more fiber, a few more nutrients, but the difference is small. And if you are eating whole wheat bread believing that it is a heart-healthy food, believing that it is protecting your arteries, you are mistaken. It is less harmful than white bread, but it is still harmful. The truly heart-healthy choice is not bread at all. It is vegetables. It is legumes. It is intact whole grains like barley, farro, and quinoa that have not been milled into flour. It is foods that still have their structure, their fiber, their cellular integrity. The second insight, then, is a shift in how you evaluate carbohydrate foods. Stop asking whether a food is whole grain or refined. Start asking whether the grain is intact or milled. Stop trusting the label that says whole grain. Start looking at the ingredient list and asking yourself whether you are eating flour or eating food. Stop believing that brown bread is meaningfully different from white bread. Start understanding that both are rapidly digesting carbohydrates that will spike your blood sugar and inflame your arteries. Now let me give you the third insight most people miss, and this one may be the most practical of all. The third insight is this: you can dramatically reduce the arterial damage from any meal by changing the order in which you eat your food and by adding protein, fat, and fiber to every carbohydrate you consume. This insight is powerful because it does not require you to completely eliminate any food group. It does not require you to follow a restrictive diet that you cannot sustain. It simply asks you to change how you eat, not just what you eat. And the science behind this is robust. Researchers have studied the effect of meal order on blood sugar and insulin responses, and what they have found is remarkable. If you eat your vegetables first, then your protein and fat, and then your carbohydrates, your blood sugar spike is significantly lower than if you eat the same foods in the reverse order. The fiber from the vegetables slows gastric emptying. The protein and fat trigger hormones that slow digestion. The carbohydrates, when they arrive at the end of the meal, are absorbed slowly and steadily rather than in a sudden surge. This is not a small effect. Studies have shown that eating vegetables and protein before carbohydrates can reduce the blood sugar spike by 30 to 50%. That is the difference between a meal that damages your arteries and a meal that does not. And you can achieve this difference simply by changing the order of what is on your fork. The same principle applies to adding fat to your carbohydrates. Fat slows gastric emptying. It delays the absorption of glucose. A baked potato eaten with butter, sour cream, and cheese will produce a much lower blood sugar spike than a plain baked potato. A bowl of oatmeal made with whole milk and topped with nuts and seeds will produce a much lower blood sugar spike than oatmeal made with water. A piece of bread eaten with avocado, egg, or nut butter will produce a much lower blood sugar spike than dry toast. This does not mean that adding fat makes a refined carbohydrate healthy. It does not. It means that adding fat reduces the harm. And if you are going to eat a refined carbohydrate, you should absolutely eat it with fat, protein, and fiber to protect your arteries. But the better choice, the truly heart-healthy choice, is to replace that refined carbohydrate with something else entirely. With non-starchy vegetables, with legumes, with intact whole grains, with foods that do not require rescue from fat and protein because they are not harmful in the first place. Let me give you a practical example of how these 3 insights come together in a single meal. Imagine you are going to eat lunch. The old way, the way that follows conventional low-fat, low-cholesterol advice, might look like this: a turkey sandwich on whole wheat bread with low-fat mayonnaise, a small bag of baked potato chips, and a diet soda. This meal is low in fat. It is low in cholesterol. It even uses whole wheat bread. But let me walk you through what is actually happening in your body. The whole wheat bread is flour. It spikes your blood sugar. The baked potato chips are processed potato starch. They spike your blood sugar. The turkey provides some protein, but not enough to meaningfully slow absorption. The low-fat mayonnaise has no fat to slow digestion because it is low-fat. The diet soda may or may not trigger an insulin response, depending on your individual biology. By the end of this meal, your blood sugar has spiked, your insulin has surged, and your arteries are inflamed. Now imagine a different lunch. A large salad with mixed greens, cucumber, bell peppers, tomatoes, and a handful of chickpeas. A piece of grilled salmon or chicken on top. A vinaigrette made with olive oil and vinegar. A small serving of quinoa or farro on the side, or no grains at all if you are not hungry for them. Water or unsweetened tea to drink. This meal is rich in fiber from the vegetables and chickpeas. It is rich in protein from the salmon or chicken. It is rich in healthy fats from the olive oil. The quinoa or farro, if you choose to include it, is an intact whole grain that will digest more slowly than flour. Your blood sugar will rise slowly and moderately, if at all. Your insulin will remain stable. Your arteries will not be inflamed. In fact, the anti-inflammatory compounds in the vegetables and the healthy fats will actively protect your endothelium. This is the difference between eating to lower your cholesterol and eating to protect your arteries. This is the difference between following outdated advice and understanding the hidden mechanism. This is the difference between being like Richard, our patient who did everything right by conventional standards and still had a heart attack, and being someone who knows the real story. The third insight, then, is a shift in how you build your plate. Stop building meals around carbohydrates. Start building meals around vegetables, protein, and healthy fats. Stop eating carbohydrates alone. Start eating them only in the context of a meal that includes fiber, protein, and fat to slow their absorption. Stop eating the same order every time. Start eating your vegetables and protein first, and your carbohydrates last. These simple changes, none of which require you to eliminate any food entirely, can dramatically reduce the arterial damage from your daily diet. So here we are at the end of this journey together, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge something. What I have shared with you in this video is not simple. It is not the kind of easy, one-sentence advice that fits on a bumper sticker. It is not a miracle cure. It is not a list of forbidden foods. It is something more valuable than that. It is a complete reframing of how you think about heart health. And I know that reframing takes time. It takes reflection. It takes practice. But I also know that it is worth it. Because the old way, the way that told you to fear cholesterol and avoid fat, the way that told you to build your meals around grains and processed, low-fat products, that way has not worked. It has not prevented the epidemic of heart disease. It has not protected people like Richard. And it has left millions of people confused, frustrated, and still at risk. So let me offer you a calm, practical takeaway. Not a list of rules, not a rigid diet, not a prescription for perfection, but a perspective. A way of seeing your food and your body that will serve you far better than any list of do's and don'ts ever could. Here's the perspective I want you to hold. Heart disease is not primarily a disease of cholesterol. It is primarily a disease of inflammation. And the primary dietary driver of that inflammation, the thing that most reliably and most repeatedly injures your arteries, is the rapid and frequent delivery of glucose into your bloodstream from refined carbohydrates and added sugars. This is not about never eating another carbohydrate. This is not about becoming afraid of food. This is about awareness. This is about understanding that every time you eat, you have a choice. You can choose foods that will spike your blood sugar, spike your insulin, inflame your arteries, and destabilize your plaques. Or you can choose foods that will nourish your body, stabilize your blood sugar, reduce inflammation, and protect your arteries. And most of the time, the difference between those two choices is not complicated. It does not require a degree in nutrition. It does not require counting grams or weighing portions. It requires one simple question: how quickly will this food raise my blood sugar? Let me give you a practical framework for answering that question in your daily life. The foods that raise your blood sugar the fastest are the ones that have been processed into small particles, stripped of their fiber, and separated from the fats and proteins that normally slow digestion. These are the foods that come in boxes, bags, and packages. These are the foods that are made from flour, from sugar, from refined starches. These are the foods that have been engineered for shelf stability and convenience, not for human health. White bread, white rice, white pasta, crackers, pretzels, cereals, granola bars, pancakes, waffles, muffins, bagels, tortillas made from refined flour, rice cakes, popcorn from a microwave bag, fruit juice, soda, sweetened teas, sports drinks, flavored yogurts with added sugar, commercial salad dressings with added sugar, pasta sauces with added sugar. The list goes on. The foods that raise your blood sugar the slowest, or not at all, are the ones that are still intact, still whole, still accompanied by their natural fiber, fat, and protein. These are the foods that grow, that live, that spoil. These are the foods that do not need a nutrition label because they are single ingredients. Non-starchy vegetables, leafy greens, broccoli, cauliflower, bell peppers, cucumbers, tomatoes, zucchini, asparagus, green beans, mushrooms, onions, garlic, berries, cherries, citrus fruits, apples, pears, avocados, nuts and seeds, legumes, lentils, chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans, intact whole grains like steel-cut oats, barley, farro, quinoa, and brown rice eaten in moderation. Fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, and sardines. Eggs, poultry, grass-fed meat in moderation. Full-fat dairy in moderation. Olive oil, coconut oil, butter from grass-fed cows. Now, I want to be realistic with you. I know that not everyone can eat a perfect diet of whole foods every single day. I know that life is busy, that schedules are tight, that budgets are limited, that taste preferences are real, and that food is not just fuel. Food is comfort. Food is culture. Food is connection. And I am not here to tell you to give up all the foods you love. I am here to tell you to understand them, to see them clearly, to make informed choices rather than blind ones. If you are going to eat a refined carbohydrate, and most of you will, I want you to do 3 things. First, eat it in smaller quantities. A small serving of pasta, not a large one. A single slice of bread, not 2. A half cup of rice, not a full cup. Second, eat it alongside protein, fat, and fiber. Add chicken to your pasta. Add butter and cheese to your bread. Add beans and avocado to your rice. Third, eat it at the end of your meal. Eat your vegetables first. Eat your protein and fat second. Eat your carbohydrates last. These 3 strategies, practiced consistently, will dramatically reduce the blood sugar spike and the arterial inflammation from the carbohydrates you choose to eat. But let me also say this: if you truly want to protect your heart, if you want to reduce your risk of a heart attack in the most meaningful way possible, the single most powerful change you can make is to replace the refined carbohydrates in your diet with non-starchy vegetables. Not with whole wheat bread, not with brown rice, not with whole grain pasta, with vegetables, with leafy greens, with colorful plants that grow above the ground. These foods are so low in rapidly digestible carbohydrates that they will not spike your blood sugar at all. They are rich in fiber, which feeds your gut bacteria and reduces inflammation. They are rich in antioxidants, which neutralize oxidative stress. They are rich in potassium, which lowers blood pressure. They are rich in nitrates, which improve endothelial function. And they are so low in calories that you can eat large volumes of them without worrying about weight gain. I am not saying you should become a vegetarian. I am not saying you should never eat another grain. I am saying that if you look at your plate and half of it is covered in non-starchy vegetables, a quarter of it is covered in protein, and a quarter of it is covered in healthy fats, and perhaps a small serving of intact whole grains or starchy vegetables, you are eating a heart-protective diet. A diet that will stabilize your blood sugar. A diet that will lower your insulin. A diet that will reduce inflammation. A diet that will give your arteries a chance to heal. And here is something else I want you to hear. It is never too late. It does not matter if you are 40 or 50 or 60 or 70. It does not matter if you have been eating the standard American diet for decades. It does not matter if you already have a diagnosis of heart disease or diabetes or prediabetes. Your body retains an incredible capacity to heal. Within hours of eating a low-inflammatory meal, your endothelial function begins to improve. Within days of reducing your refined carbohydrate intake, your blood sugar and insulin levels begin to normalize. Within weeks, inflammatory markers begin to drop. Within months, blood pressure improves. Within years, the progression of arterial disease can slow, stop, and in some cases, even reverse. This is not optimism. This is physiology. This is what the evidence shows. The human body is designed to survive, to adapt, to repair. But it cannot repair if you never stop injuring it. It cannot heal if you never give it a break. And the single most common source of daily injury to your arteries, the thing that keeps them in a constant state of low-grade inflammation, is the repeated spike in blood sugar and insulin from refined carbohydrates and added sugars. I want to return to Richard for a moment. The patient I told you about earlier, the man who did everything right by conventional standards and still had a heart attack. Richard survived. He got his stent, he went home. But he also got something else. He got a new understanding. He finally understood that his cholesterol was never the real problem. He finally understood that his low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet was not protecting his heart. He finally understood that the foods he thought were healthy, the whole grain cereals, the low-fat crackers, the brown rice, the fruit juice, were actually injuring his arteries every single day. Richard changed his diet. Not overnight, not perfectly, but meaningfully. He started eating eggs for breakfast instead of cereal. He started drinking water instead of juice. He started eating salads with olive oil and vinegar instead of sandwiches on whole wheat bread. He started eating roasted vegetables with his chicken instead of brown rice. He started snacking on nuts and cheese instead of pretzels and granola bars. His cholesterol numbers did not change dramatically, but his blood sugar normalized. His insulin levels dropped. His inflammatory markers plummeted. And when his cardiologist did a follow-up angiogram a year later, the remaining plaques in his arteries were stable. The fibrous caps were thicker. The inflammation was gone. Richard was no longer at imminent risk of another heart attack. Richard is not special. Richard is not a medical miracle. Richard is an example of what happens when you finally understand the real mechanism. When you stop chasing the wrong target. When you start eating in a way that actually addresses the cause of the disease, rather than a secondary marker. So here is my final message to you. Do not be afraid of cholesterol. Do not be afraid of saturated fat. Do not be afraid of eggs. Do not be afraid of butter. Be afraid of the foods that spike your blood sugar. Be afraid of the foods that keep your insulin high. Be afraid of the foods that inflame your arteries day after day after day. And then, instead of living in fear, live in awareness. Look at your plate and ask yourself one question. How quickly will this food raise my blood sugar? If the answer is very quickly, eat less of it. Eat it with other foods that slow it down, and eat it at the end of your meal. If the answer is slowly or not at all, eat more of it. Fill your plate with those foods. Make them the center of your diet. This is not complicated. This is not restrictive. This is not a diet that will leave you feeling deprived or hungry. This is a way of eating that is satisfying, sustainable, and deeply protective. It is the way humans ate for most of our evolutionary history, before the Industrial Revolution, before the advent of refined flour and added sugar, before the epidemic of heart disease began. It is not a new discovery. It is an old wisdom, rediscovered and validated by modern science. I am Dr. Narges, and my goal in every video I make is to give you the clarity you need to make informed decisions about your health. Not to scare you, not to sell you anything, not to tell you that you have to be perfect, but to walk alongside you as you navigate the complex, confusing, often contradictory world of health information. You deserve to understand what is actually happening inside your body. You deserve to know which risks are real and which are distractions. You deserve to make choices from a place of knowledge, not fear. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this video has given you a new way of thinking about heart health, I hope you will reflect on it, share it with someone you love, and start making small, meaningful changes in your daily life. Not because you have to, not because you are afraid, but because you now understand. And understanding, as you have just learned, changes everything. Take care of yourself, be curious, be thoughtful, and I will see you in the next video.